Imagine a plan so audacious, so catastrophic, that it could have changed the destiny of England forever. A plot meant to wipe out the king, the parliament, and the entire ruling class in a single fiery blast. This is the story of the Gunpowder Plot, one of the most infamous conspiracies of political and religious terrorism in world history. It's a tale of desperate men, a kingdom on edge, and a secret that, if successful, would have plunged an entire nation into chaos. The year is 1605, and England is a powder keg waiting for a spark. To truly understand why a group of men would attempt something so extreme, we have to go back to the religious turmoil of 17th century England. For decades, the nation had been torn apart by a bitter conflict between Catholics and Protestants. Following the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, who had established Protestantism as the state religion, English Catholics faced brutal persecution. They were forbidden from practicing their faith, forced to attend Protestant services, and heavily fined for any sign of disobedience. Priests were hunted down and executed as traitors. It was a time of immense fear and oppression. When King James I, the son of the Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots, ascended to the throne in 1603, a wave of hope swept through the Catholic community. They believed he would be more tolerant, that he would finally grant them the freedom to worship. But this hope was quickly crushed. James, eager to secure his position, not only continued the anti-Catholic policies, but in some cases made them even harsher. For many Catholics, this was the ultimate betrayal. The dream of peaceful coexistence was dead, and in its place, a dangerous seed of rebellion began to grow. Underground networks of resistance formed, with families secretly harboring priests and whispering of a day when their faith could be practiced freely again. It was in this climate of despair that a charismatic and determined leader emerged, Robert Catesby. Catesby was a wealthy, well-connected gentleman from a prominent Catholic family. He was handsome, intelligent, and a natural leader. But beneath his polished exterior was a man radicalized by years of persecution. He had seen his family's fortune dwindle under punitive fines and had been involved in previous failed rebellions. He was convinced that peaceful appeals were useless. In his mind, the English government was a corrupt, heretical regime that could only be cleansed by fire. Violence, he believed, was not just an option, it was a divine necessity. It was Catesby who conceived the core idea of the Gunpowder Plot. He envisioned a single, decisive blow that would eliminate the king, his heirs, and the entire Protestant establishment in one fell swoop. A plan this monumental couldn't be executed alone. Catesby began to carefully recruit a small, tight-knit group of co-conspirators. These weren't common criminals, they were gentlemen, bound by shared faith and a deep sense of injustice. The first to join were his cousin Thomas Wintour and his close friend John Wright. They met in secret, their conversations filled with hushed, treasonous whispers, but they needed more than just conviction. They needed a specialist. Thomas Wintour was sent to Europe to find one. There, he met a man who would become the most famous face of the conspiracy, Guy Fawkes. Fawkes was an English Catholic who had spent years fighting as a soldier of fortune for Spain, was a devout, steely-nerved, military man with extensive knowledge of explosives. He was the perfect man for the job. Back in London, the core group of 5 conspirators, Catesby, Wintour, Wright, Fawkes, and Thomas Percy met at a tavern and swore a solemn oath on a prayer book to see their mission through, no matter the cost. Their plan was as simple as it was terrifying. They would strike on the day of the state opening of Parliament, when King James, the royal family, the Lords, and the Commons would all be gathered in one place. Thomas Percy, a member of the King's Guard, used his connections to rent a small house right next to the Parliament building. Their initial idea was to dig a tunnel from the house's cellar into the foundations of the House of Lords, but digging through stone was backbreaking, slow work. Then fortune seemed to smile on them. The cellar directly beneath the House of Lords became available for rent. It was the perfect opportunity. Under the cover of darkness, they began smuggling in barrels of gunpowder, 36 of them in total, enough to obliterate the entire building and everything for hundreds of feet around. They concealed the massive stash under piles of firewood and coal, with Guy Fawkes posing as a caretaker named John Johnson. All they had to do was wait for November 5th. Their secondary plan was to kidnap the king's young daughter, Princess Elizabeth, install her as a puppet queen, and ignite a Catholic uprising across the Midlands. But as the date drew near, a moral dilemma began to trouble some of the conspirators. While they hated the Protestant government, they knew that many innocent people, including some sympathetic Catholic lords, would be present in Parliament on that day. One of the plotters, likely Francis Tresham, decided he couldn't let his brother-in-law, the Catholic Lord Monteagle, die. In late October, an anonymous letter was delivered to Monteagle, cryptically warning him to stay away from Parliament. The letter read, "They shall receive a terrible blow this Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them." Monteagle, alarmed, immediately took the letter to the king's chief minister, Robert Cecil. At first, the warning was treated with some skepticism, but Cecil, a shrewd and cautious man, decided to investigate. The plotters learned that their secret was out, but Catesby, ever the optimist, convinced them to hold their nerve. He believed the warning was too vague to be taken seriously. On the night of November 4th, just hours before the planned attack, search parties began to sweep the labyrinthine cellars beneath Parliament. During the first search, they found a large pile of firewood and a servant, John Johnson, who they now know as Guy Fawkes. He claimed the wood belonged to his master, Thomas Percy. The guards left. The king, feeling uneasy, ordered a second, more thorough search in the early hours of November 5th. This time, they discovered the truth. They pulled back the firewood and found the barrels of gunpowder. Fawkes was arrested on the spot, carrying fuses and a pocket watch. The plot had been foiled at the last possible moment. Fawkes was taken to the Tower of London, where he was interrogated. He remained defiant, but under days of brutal torture, he finally broke, confessing his real name and revealing the identities of his fellow conspirators. News of Fawkes' arrest spread like wildfire, and the other plotters fled London. A desperate manhunt began. Catesby and the remaining core group raced across the countryside, trying to rally support for their planned uprising, but no one would join them. Their reputations were now tainted by treason. Hunted and exhausted, they made their last stand at Holbeck House in Staffordshire. As they were preparing for a siege, a stray spark ignited some gunpowder they were drying by the fire, injuring several of them in a bitter twist of irony. The sheriff and his men surrounded the house. In the ensuing shootout, Robert Catesby and Thomas Percy were killed by a single musket shot. The survivors were captured and taken to London to face trial. Their fate was sealed. Were publicly hanged, drawn, and quartered a gruesome execution reserved for traitors. The failure of the Gunpowder Plot had a profound and lasting impact on England. Instead of bringing about Catholic liberation, it triggered an even more severe wave of anti-Catholic sentiment and legislation that would last for centuries. The event was immediately commemorated. Parliament declared November 5th a day of public thanksgiving, a celebration of the King's miraculous escape. Bonfire Night, or Guy Fawkes Day, was born. To this day, people across the UK light bonfires and set off fireworks, burning an effigy of Guy Fawkes. Over time, Fawkes himself has transformed from a villain into a complex symbol. The stylized mask representing him has been adopted by anti-establishment movements worldwide, a powerful icon of rebellion against oppression. The Gunpowder Plot remains a stark and timeless warning about the dangers of extremism and intolerance. It shows the terrifying lengths people will go to when they feel their beliefs and way of life are under threat. It's a dark chapter in history, but one that reminds us of the fragile line between conviction and fanaticism, and how close a kingdom once came to being blown apart by a secret born of desperation and rage. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most dramatic conspiracies, please remember to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more stories from the past. Thank you so much for watching.